At my granddaughter's wedding, I was supposed to sit in the first chair. Not because I needed attention, because she asked me for it. "Grandpa," she told me, "if I get nervous, I need to see you before I walk." But when I reached the front row, my name card was gone. My son stepped in front of me and whispered, "Dad, don't embarrass us. They belong up front." He meant his rich in-laws. Then he moved me behind a column near the musicians. I opened the wedding program. It still said, "Reserved, grandfather of the bride." When my granddaughter walked in, her eyes went straight to that first chair. She searched for me and did not find me. "Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Please take care of your health while you listen." Because my son thought he had only moved an old man. He didn't know what else was sitting under my name. My name is Gabriel Donovan. I am 69 years old, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the light makes even an old wall look like it is holding a memory. For most of my life, I taught music in public schools. Choir, piano, basics, a little trumpet when the budget forgot we needed a real band teacher. I was never famous. I never stood on a grand stage. Most days, my audience was a room full of children tapping pencils, whispering, and pretending they did not care until a song found them. I learned early that every child needs one steady face in the room. Not a perfect face. A present one. When a sixth grader had to sing alone for the first time, I watched their eyes search the crowd. If they found a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, anyone smiling like they believed the child would survive the next note, the child usually did. My wife, Alma, understood that better than I did. Alma Donovan worked as a reading aide at an elementary school and played piano for the church choir on Sundays. She had small hands, but when she touched a keyboard, the whole room seemed to sit up straighter. She used to say, "A child should never have to search the room for the person who loved them first." I kept that sentence after she died. I also kept my old tuning fork. Silver, scratched, nothing special to anyone else. I carried it in my jacket pocket for habit. The way some men carry a pocket knife. Before a concert, before a school recital, before a church performance, I would tap it lightly and listen for the note. A piano goes out of tune slowly. So does a family, if nobody listens. My granddaughter, Marissa Donovan, was the child I listened for the most. She was 24 when she got married, an elementary art teacher with paint on her sleeves more often than makeup on her face. But to me, she was still the little girl who brought me drawings of houses with purple roofs and asked if clouds could have music inside them. Her mother was gone too soon, and my son Patrick was always working. Hospitality sales, client dinners, hotel conferences, people to impress. So Marissa and I built our own small world. Saturday museum walks, thrift store picture frames, school art shows in noisy gyms, piano benches where she sat beside me and pressed one careful key at a time. Whenever she had to stand in front of people, she looked for me. "Grandpa," she said once after a third-grade art presentation, "when I see you, I remember I can finish." That stayed with me, maybe more than it should have. A few months before her wedding, Marissa called me at night. Her voice was bright, but there was a little tremble under it. "Grandpa, I want you in the first chair." I laughed softly. "First chair? I haven't played in an orchestra in years." "I mean at the wedding," she said. "Bride's side, first row, first chair. If I get nervous, I need to see you before I walk." I promised her. Not casually. A promise like that is not about seating. It is about being found. Patrick knew about that promise. He also knew the Bradfords were the kind of people he had spent half his life trying to impress. Sterling Bradford owned luxury properties. Blythe Bradford served on gallery boards and smiled like every room needed her permission to arrange itself. Patrick was not a bad son in the simple way stories like to make people bad. That would be easier. He loved Marissa. I believe that. But he had grown ashamed of ordinary things. My old suits, my retired teacher stories, the way I tuned church pianos for extra money, The way I still said please to waiters and thank you to janitors because Alma raised me to notice who kept a room standing. Patrick wanted the Bradfords to see him as equal, and somewhere along the way, he decided I made that harder. I saw it before the wedding. Small things. Dad, maybe wear the gray suit, not the brown one. Dad, don't mention tuning pianos unless someone asks. Dad, the Bradfords are formal people, so just keep things simple. Simple. That word can sound kind until you realize someone is using it to mean invisible. Still, I told myself he was stressed. Weddings make people foolish. Status makes them worse. I believed I was going to San Rosario Chapel to keep one promise to my granddaughter. I did not know my own son had already traded that promise for a place beside people he thought mattered more. The first time I met Sterling Bradford, he shook my hand like he was accepting a delivery. Not rude, not warm either, just finished with it before I was. He was a real estate investor, the kind of man who could look at an old building and see rental yield before he saw the people who had lived there. His suit fit perfectly. His shoes looked untouched by weather. When he spoke, everyone around him seemed to understand that interrupting was not part of the arrangement. Blythe Bradford was softer on the surface. That made her sharper underneath. She served on gallery boards, charity committees, and foundation lunches where people used words like access and community while deciding who sat close enough to be photographed. She had a careful smile, the kind that never wasted itself on someone who could not improve a room. Kyle Bradford, Marissa's fiancé, was not cruel. That is important. He was young, pleasant, and used to being carried by decisions already made for him. He loved Marissa in the gentle way young men love before they understand that marriage sometimes requires choosing your wife over the family table you were born into. A month before the wedding, Patrick invited me to dinner with them. "Just be yourself, Dad," he said on the phone. Then he paused. "Maybe the quieter version." I should have said something. Instead, I ironed the gray suit. At dinner, Sterling asked about my work. "I taught music," I told him. "Public school. These days I tune pianos part-time." He nodded. Honest work. There it was, the compliment that stops one step short of respect. Blythe smiled and said, "How charming. Marissa must have loved that sort of childhood influence." That sort, like music, thrift store frames, and school art shows were cute little decorations before the real families arrived. Patrick heard it. I know he did. His shoulders tightened for half a second. Then he laughed too quickly and changed the subject to the wedding menu. That was how he survived rooms like that. Not by defending where he came from, but by moving it out of the way. The Bradfords had opinions about everything: flowers, photos, processional timing, the order of family entrances. Blythe used the phrase visual hierarchy twice, which made me want to tap my tuning fork on a water glass and see if the whole table could still hear a human note. Sterling said, "The front row should reflect the families building their future." I looked at Patrick. He looked at his plate. Later, near the restaurant entrance, Blythe touched Patrick's sleeve and said softly, "A grandfather can watch from anywhere. Sponsors should be visible." I was not meant to hear it, but old music teachers hear more than people think. Patrick walked me to my car afterward. He seemed embarrassed, but not enough to be brave. "Dad, they're just particular." "So was your mother," I said. But Alma never confused particular with unkind. He looked away. "Please don't start." Those 3 words told me the argument had already begun somewhere inside him, and I was losing it without being invited. The week of the wedding, little things shifted. Patrick called to confirm what I was wearing. Then he asked whether I planned to bring my tuning fork. "It's in my pocket most days," I said. He sighed. "Dad, it's a formal wedding." "It is a tuning fork, Patrick, not a raccoon." For a second, he almost laughed. Almost. Then the old worry returned to his voice. "I just want everything smooth for Marissa." "So do I." but we did not mean the same thing. To me, smooth meant Marissa walking down the aisle and finding the faces that loved her. To Patrick, smooth meant no one important noticing the ordinary father he had not learned how to claim. The printed programs came from a local shop owned by Cora Fields. Cora had printed school concert flyers for me years ago. She knew my name, knew Alma's, and knew Marissa, because Santa Fe is a city that pretends to be large until grief or weddings prove otherwise. The final program listed me clearly. Reserved, grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. Cora told me later that was the version approved for print. But the night before the wedding, after the programs were already boxed, Patrick sent a separate seating revision to the chapel. Not to Cora, to the volunteer staff. That was important. Paper can tell the truth if you know which copy was printed before the lie arrived. Nanette Wells saw it happen. Nanette was a retired school secretary volunteering at San Rosario Chapel. Women like Nanette keep civilization alive with clipboards and disapproval. She could smell a suspicious correction from across a hallway. On the wedding morning, she watched Patrick remove the card from the first chair on the bride's side. Grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. He replaced it with Bradford family, parents of the groom. Nanette asked, "Isn't that Mr. Donovan's seat?" Patrick said, "We had to adjust. Please don't make this a thing." That was the sentence, right there. Please don't make this a thing. People say that after they have already made it one. Willow Grant, Marissa's 18-year-old cousin, was helping at the guest table. She saw the program. Then she saw the seating chart. Her face went red in that honest young way that adults spend years training out of themselves. "Grandpa Gabe," she whispered when I arrived, "this doesn't match." I looked down at the program in my hand. My name was still there. Then I looked toward the first row. My chair was not. By the time I arrived at San Rosario Chapel, the program still honored me, but the chair had already been sold to people my son thought mattered more. I stood beside the guest table with the wedding program in my hand, reading my own name like it belonged to somebody else. Reserved, grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. There it was, black ink, clean type, no confusion, no mistake. A promise printed before someone decided promises could be rearranged for people with better shoes. Willow Grant stood next to me, chewing the inside of her cheek. She was 18, nervous, and too honest for a wedding where adults had already started lying with ribbon and cardstock. "Grandpa Gabe," she whispered, "I swear, it was different yesterday." I looked at the seating chart on her clipboard. My name had been moved, not erased completely. That would have been too obvious. Just shifted. Placed behind an adobe column near the musicians, in a row where a man could technically say he attended the wedding, while everyone else could pretend he had not mattered enough to be seen. And in the first chair on the bride's side, where Marissa had asked me to sit, there was a new card. Bradford family, parents of the groom. I looked toward the front. Sterling Bradford was already standing there, talking to another guest with one hand in his pocket, like the chapel had been built around his calendar. Blythe Bradford sat in the chair meant for me. She had placed a small, pearl-colored clutch on the arm of it. That little purse made me angrier than it should have, not because it was expensive, because it rested on the space where my granddaughter had expected to find me. Nanette Wells came over then, holding a stack of folded programs against her chest. She did not smile. Retired school secretaries do not waste smiles when records have been tampered with. "Mr. Donovan," she said quietly, "I thought you should know. Your son changed that card himself." I looked at her. "When?" "This morning." Willow's eyes widened. Nanette lowered her voice further. "He said it was a family adjustment." A family adjustment. That was one way to describe moving a grandfather out of his granddaughter's sight. "Did Marissa approve it?" I asked. Nanette shook her head. "She wasn't here." I folded the program once, carefully. Too carefully, maybe. A person can do many things when he is trying not to shake. Patrick appeared before I could walk toward the front. He came fast, but not fast enough to look innocent. "Dad," he said, "please, not now." I held up the program. "Then when?" His eyes flicked to Willow, then Nanette, then the guests beginning to fill the chapel. "It's just a seat." That sentence was small. Cowardly things often are. I looked past him to the first row. "Then why did you give it away?" His jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I said. "You made it hard when you moved me without telling the bride." He stepped closer. His voice dropped. "Marissa has enough to worry about today. She asked for me there." "I know." That hurt more than if he had denied it, because it meant he understood the promise before he broke it. Patrick glanced back toward Sterling and Blythe. "The Bradfords are important people, Dad. Sterling has connections. Blythe sits on boards. Kyle's family can help Marissa in ways we can't." There it was. Not hatred, not even cruelty in the loud sense. Something worse. Calculation dressed as concern. I slipped my hand into my jacket pocket and touched Alma's old tuning fork. Cold metal, familiar edge. For years, that little fork had helped me find the right note in a noisy room. That day, it helped me hear the wrong one. "The chair was not for your business contacts," I said. "It was for your daughter's nerves." Patrick looked away, only for a second, but I saw the shame under his irritation. "Dad, don't embarrass us." That line returned, sharper now. Us, not Marissa. Us. His image, his place beside the Bradfords, his need to prove that the Donovans were not just a retired music teacher, a dead church pianist, and a girl who became an art teacher because somebody once told her colors mattered. Willow's phone buzzed. She looked down, then turned the screen toward me. "I found it," she whispered. It was a photo of the original seating email from Cora Fields's print shop. The file had been sent 2 weeks earlier, with my name clearly marked in the first chair. Timestamp. Attachment. Bride's side front row. Gabriel Donovan. Then Willow swiped to another image. A later seating revision. Sent the night before. From Patrick. My name moved behind the column. Bradford's moved forward. No explanation. Just placement. Patrick saw the screen and his face changed. "Willow," he said, "that's not your concern." She looked at him with the blunt disappointment only young people still have the courage to show. "It is if Marissa asks me where her grandfather is." He opened his mouth, closed it. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then music began testing softly near the front. A violinist drew one long note across the chapel, thin and trembling before settling into pitch. I knew that sound. A note trying to find itself. Patrick straightened his jacket. "Dad, I'm asking you to be reasonable." I looked at the program again, then at the chair, then at my son. "Reasonable is telling your daughter the truth before she walks down that aisle." He said nothing. That silence told me he had no intention of doing it. So I did what old men learn to do when their hearts are breaking in public. I folded the proof. I put the program in my inside pocket. I kept the tuning fork in my hand. And I let my son believe, for a few more minutes, that moving a chair was the same thing as moving the truth. The program still honored me. The chair no longer did. And my son was asking me to pretend paper had lied louder than his hands. They seated me behind the adobe column 5 minutes before the music changed. It was not the worst seat in the chapel. That would have been easier to argue. It was worse than that. It was almost acceptable. Close enough for Patrick to say I was present. Far enough for Marissa not to find me when her knees started shaking. The musicians sat slightly ahead of me, 2 violins and a cello tucked near the side wall. One violinist kept adjusting her sheet music, and every time she leaned left, she covered the center aisle completely. I could see pieces of the chapel, a strip of flowers, half of the arch, the backs of expensive jackets. Blythe Bradford's pearl clutch resting where my hand should have been. I held the wedding program in my lap. My thumb stayed on the printed line with my name. Grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. Paper remembered me. My son did not. Willow stood near the sidewall, pretending to help a guest find a seat while watching me with angry eyes. Poor girl. She was too young to know that sometimes outrage burns hotter when it cannot be used. Nanette Wells gave me one last look from the back of the chapel. She knew. Old school secretaries always know when an adult has behaved like a child with better clothes. The music began. People stood. I stood too, slowly. One hand on the back of the chair in front of me. My fingers found the old tuning fork in my pocket and closed around it. Cold metal. One clean note waiting inside it. That was when Marissa appeared. My granddaughter, white dress, small bouquet, shoulders lifted just a little too high. She looked beautiful, yes. But more than beautiful, she looked human, nervous, young, brave in the way brides are brave when everyone is watching and their own heart is louder than the music. She took one step, then another, and her eyes went straight to the first chair. I saw it. Even from behind that column, I saw the exact moment she searched for me. Her gaze landed where I was supposed to be. Sterling Bradford sat there with his polished shoes angled neatly toward the aisle. Blythe Bradford smiled like she had been born to fill important spaces. Marissa's eyes moved once, quickly, confused. Not enough for most guests to notice, enough for me to feel it in my chest like a hand closing. She looked for me, and I was not there. That hurt more than Patrick's whisper, more than the moved card, more than the Bradfords. Because for 1 second, my granddaughter may have thought I had failed to keep the one promise she asked of me. Patrick stood near the aisle. He saw her look. I know he did. His face tightened. Then he turned slightly toward Kyle, pretending to adjust the timing of the procession. Cowardice can be very busy when truth enters a room. Rosalie Pierce, the photographer, lifted her camera right then. Click. I did not know it at the time, but she caught the whole thing. Marissa in the aisle, eyes reaching for the first chair. Sterling and Blythe sitting there. Patrick at the edge of the frame, looking away. Sometimes a photograph becomes a witness before anyone understands there will be a trial of memory later. Marissa continued walking. She found Kyle. She smiled. The ceremony moved forward as ceremonies do, carried by music and flowers, and the polite belief that nobody's heart is breaking in the wrong row. I did not stand up. I did not call Patrick's name. I did not walk to the front and pull my chair back like some wounded king in an old story. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. But Alma's voice came to me, softer than the violin. A child should never have to search the room for the person who loved them first. And I thought, she has already had to search once. I will not make her search for peace too. Before I tell you who I called from that chapel courtyard, let me ask you something. If your own son gave your seat at your granddaughter's wedding to wealthy in-laws, would you stay quiet to protect her day? Or would you make one call and let the truth enter the reception? Tell me honestly what you would have done. Because sitting there, I was not weak. I was counting the cost. There is a difference. Weakness lets people harm you because you are afraid. Restraint lets you choose the moment when truth will do the least damage to the innocent. Marissa was innocent. Her vows did not deserve to become my son's trial. So I stayed behind that column and listened. I heard pieces of the ceremony: love, promise, patience, family. Those words floated through the chapel while my own family sat rearranged by status. When Marissa said her vows, her voice steadied halfway through. I was proud of her, even then, especially then. Kyle's voice shook more than hers. He looked nervous, not cruel. That mattered to me. A weak man can still grow stronger if someone teaches him what weakness costs. The Bradfords sat straight in the first row, perfectly framed. Patrick stood where cameras could catch him. And I stayed in the place he had decided was safe for me. Safe for his image, not for my heart. When the ceremony ended, people clapped. I clapped too. Quietly, honestly. Because Marissa had still married the man she loved, and I would not let Patrick's shame steal every good thing from that room. As guests began moving toward the courtyard, Willow slipped beside me. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Grandpa Gabe." I looked in at her. She held up her phone. I found the original seating email. On the screen was the first version. Bride's side. Front row. First chair. Gabriel Donovan. Then she showed me the revised one. Sent late the night before. From Patrick. My name moved behind the column. Bradford's moved forward. Willow swallowed. "Marissa doesn't know." I looked toward the chapel doors, where my granddaughter was laughing through tears while people hugged her. Then I looked back at the two seating emails. One showed the promise. One showed the betrayal. I folded the program and slipped it into my coat pocket with the tuning fork. "I did not stay quiet because I was weak," I said. Willow looked at me, confused. I watched Patrick shake Sterling Bradford's hand like he had just secured something important. Then I finished the thought. I stayed quiet because my granddaughter's vows did not deserve to become my son's trial. The courtyard outside San Rosario Chapel was beautiful in the way places can be beautiful while your heart is trying to stand upright. Adobe walls held the afternoon light. Bougainvillea climbed one corner in pink bursts. A guitarist played something soft near the fountain, and guests drifted around with champagne glasses, speaking in those gentle wedding voices people use when they want photographs to believe them. I stood alone beneath a small olive tree. The program was still in my coat pocket. So was Alma's tuning fork. And on Willow's phone, sitting between us like evidence, were two seating emails. One honored a promise. The other moved me behind a column. Willow looked at me with wet eyes. "What are you going to do?" I watched Marissa across the courtyard. She was laughing with Kyle, both hands around her bouquet, still glowing from the vows. For one moment, she looked free. I wanted to keep that for her, at least a little longer. "I'm not going to ruin her wedding," I said. Willow nodded, but she looked disappointed, like she thought silence meant surrender. "It doesn't mean I'm doing nothing." I stepped a few paces away from the music and took out my phone. There are calls you make with anger. There are calls you make with panic. This one, I mean with the kind of calm that only arrives after something inside you has stopped pleading. I called Meredith Bellamy. Meredith was an estate and education trust attorney in Santa Fe. She had handled Alma's final paperwork, then years later helped me set up something private for Marissa. Not flashy, not public, just a quiet structure for a young woman who loved children, paint, classrooms, and making ordinary lives brighter. Meredith answered on the third ring. "Mr. Donovan," she said. "I thought you were at the wedding." "I am." A pause. "Is Marissa all right?" "She is," I said. "That is why I'm calling quietly." Meredith's voice changed. Lawyers hear pauses the way musicians hear wrong notes. "What happened?" I looked back through the chapel doorway. Patrick was standing near Sterling Bradford, smiling too hard. Blythe was speaking to another guest with her hand resting lightly on Sterling's arm, like the whole afternoon belonged to their family. My reserved role was removed, I said. Patrick gave my chair to the Bradfords. Marissa was not told. Meredith did not gasp. Good attorneys do not waste breath on shock. Was this before or after the ceremony? Before. Did Marissa ask for that seat? Yes. Do you have proof of the original arrangement? I looked at Willow. She has the original seating email and the revision Patrick sent. Good, Meredith said. Preserve both. Then she asked the question that made the air around me change. Was there any planned announcement today involving the trust? I frowned. What announcement? Another pause. This one was hers. Patrick contacted me twice this week. My hand tightened around the phone. For what? He asked whether he could coordinate the newlywed support transfer for presentation at the reception. Presentation. That word landed almost as hard as the missing chair. Not gift. Not protection. Presentation. I looked across the courtyard again. Patrick was no longer smiling. He had turned his head slightly, watching me now. Meredith continued, I did not approve anything. I told him donor contact authority remained with you, and beneficiary review had to involve Marissa directly. What did he say? He said you preferred to stay in the background. I laughed once under my breath, not because it was funny, because the cruelty had become efficient. In the chapel, he put me in the background. In the paperwork, he had already written me there. Willow stepped closer. Is everything okay? I covered the phone for a second. No. That was all I could say. Meredith's voice returned, clean and careful. Mr. Donovan, if your family role was removed under pressure, and if there is any attempt to present trust support without proper authorization, I can pause the transfer today. Pause what exactly? The newlywed support addendum. I looked down at the courtyard stones, the same stones Marissa had crossed minutes earlier as a bride. You can stop Patrick from touching it? He cannot touch it now, Meredith said, but I can formalize that no disbursement, announcement, or coordination occurs through Patrick, the Bradford family, or any family representative until I review directly with you and Marissa. There it was. The first clean note in a room full of noise. I had not called to punish Marissa. Never. That money was for her. But I was beginning to understand that love sometimes has to close one door so the right person can walk through another. Meredith added, drier now. Family drama is why trust documents have margins. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Alma would have liked her. Patrick crossed the courtyard toward me then, fast, not running. Weddings do not allow men like Patrick to run unless someone faints. But his face had changed. The salesman's smile was gone. The sun was gone too, mostly. What came toward me was a man who knew a private arrangement might be turning public. Dad, he said, stopping a few feet away, who are you talking to? I looked at him. Someone had handed him a glass of champagne. He had not taken a sip. Meredith Bellamy. His fingers tightened around the stem. Why? She asked the same thing about you. Willow backed away slightly, but she did not leave. Patrick lowered his voice. This is not the time. You made time when you moved my chair. His eyes flashed. Please don't start this here. I didn't start it here, Patrick. I found it here. He glanced toward the Bradfords, then toward Marissa. That glance told me almost everything. He was not worried about his daughter's pain, not first. He was worried about who might see it. Meredith was still on the line. I raised the phone slightly. She says you asked to coordinate the support transfer for presentation. Patrick swallowed. It was just a question. No, I said. A question is, Dad, may I? What you asked was how to display something you did not own. His face reddened. The Bradfords are not enemies, Dad. They can open doors for her. Marissa needed one door today, the one where she could look down the aisle and find me. For a second, something like shame moved across his face. Then he buried it. You're making this about yourself. I stepped closer. No. You made me disappear, then tried to use my gift as proof you belonged beside people who made you feel small. That hit him. I saw it, but not hard enough to make him honest. Meredith spoke through the phone, calm as a sealed envelope. Mr. Donovan, would you like me to issue the temporary pause now? Patrick's head snapped toward the phone. Pause what? I held his gaze. Someone who still reads what your family tries to rearrange. Then I said into the phone, yes, Meredith. Pause it. Across the courtyard, the reception doors opened. A coordinator announced that family speeches would begin soon. Patrick looked at the doors, then at me. For the first time that day, he understood the chair had not been the only thing he moved. Patrick thought he had shifted an old man out of view. He did not know he had just moved me close enough to the phone call that could stop his whole presentation. Patrick stared at me as if I had just pulled a wall out from behind the wedding. "What exactly are you pausing?" he asked. His voice was low, but the fear in it was not. Meredith Bellamy stayed on speaker now. Her tone did not rise. It did not need to. Lawyers who understand their documents never have to shout at people who only understand appearances. "The newlywed support addendum," she said. Patrick's jaw tightened. "Meredith, this is a family event." "Yes," she answered, "which is why the beneficiary's interests matter more than the presentation." I almost closed my eyes at that. Presentation. That word had been floating through the whole wedding like perfume over something spoiled. The first chair had been presentation. The Bradfords in front had been presentation. My being placed behind a column had been presentation. And now I understood that the gift I built for Marissa had been invited into the same costume. Willow stood a few feet away, still holding her phone with the seating emails. She looked from Patrick to me, realizing that the stolen chair had opened a door into something much larger. Patrick stepped closer. "Dad, let's not do this in the courtyard." I looked around. The courtyard was full of guests drinking champagne under pink bougainvillea. A guitarist played near the fountain. Sterling Bradford was laughing with two men in expensive linen jackets. Blythe was arranging people for photographs like they were objects on a shelf. Marissa was across the courtyard with Kyle, smiling for an aunt who had traveled from Denver. She did not know yet. That was the only reason I still measured my voice. "You were comfortable moving me in the chapel," I said. "Don't suddenly become private when the paperwork moves back." Patrick glanced toward Willow. "Willow, give us a minute." She did not move. Good girl. Some families need one young person who has not yet learned to abandon the truth for comfort. Meredith asked, "Mr. Donovan, would you like me to summarize the trust structure so there is no confusion?" Patrick said quickly, "That's not necessary." "It is," I said. There was a brief silence on the phone. Then Meredith began. "The Marissa Donovan Art Education Trust was established by Gabriel Donovan after the passing of Alma Donovan. The purpose is educational, professional, and transitional support for Marissa Donovan, specifically related to art education, classroom expenses, student debt relief, and early household stability." Patrick looked away. He knew all that. Of course he did. He just hoped I would keep treating it like something too private to defend. Meredith continued. "The pending newlywed support addendum totals $92,000. Willow's eyes widened. Patrick closed his eyes for half a second. There it was. Not a fortune in the world Sterling Bradford lived in, perhaps, but to a young elementary art teacher starting a marriage in 2026, with rent rising, groceries climbing, student loans hanging over her, and teacher salaries stretched thinner than patience. $92,000 was not decoration. It was breathing room. Meredith listed it carefully. $31,000 allocated toward student loan support, $18,000 reserved for first classroom and art supply needs, $28,000 available for first home savings if Marissa independently chooses that direction, $15,000 held as an emergency transition reserve. Every number had a purpose. Every dollar had a reason. Alma and I had not built that fund for applause. We built it because we knew love should sometimes arrive quietly enough that pride does not have to beg. Patrick rubbed the back of his neck. "Dad, I know what the trust is." "No," I said. "You knew what you wanted it to look like." That one hit him. Meredith added, "Under the terms, Mr. Gabriel Donovan remains the controlling donor contact. Patrick Donovan is not trustee. Sterling and Blythe Bradford are not parties. Kyle Bradford is not a party. Marissa Donovan is the beneficiary. Patrick's face reddened. You make it sound like I was stealing from her. Meredith did not answer emotionally. I am describing authority. That was worse for him. Facts often are. Patrick turned to me, dropping his voice again. I was trying to help Marissa start married life strong. She asked for me in the first chair. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this, I said. Because you wanted my money close and my face far away. His mouth opened, then closed. The truth had found the exact note. For a second, I remembered Patrick as a boy, sitting beside Alma at our upright piano. He used to hate practicing scales. He wanted to play songs before he learned where the notes lived. Alma would tap the bench and say, "You cannot skip the foundation and still expect harmony." He never liked that lesson. Apparently, he still did not. Meredith said, "Mr. Donovan, I received 2 emails from Patrick this week regarding coordination." Patrick snapped, "They were procedural." Meredith replied, "One email asked whether the support could be announced during the reception as a Donovan-Bradford family contribution." Willow's mouth fell open slightly. I looked at Patrick. He did not look at me. Meredith continued, "A second email requested simplified language for presentation, stating that Gabriel Donovan preferred to remain in the background." The courtyard sound thinned. Music, glasses, soft laughter. All of it moved far away. Background. He had written me there before he seated me there. "You told her I preferred the background?" I asked. Patrick swallowed. "Dad, you hate attention." "I hate vanity," I said. "That is not the same as being erased." He flinched, and for one moment I almost pitied him. Almost. Because I could see the shape of his fear. He feared the Bradfords. Not physically, socially. He feared their judgment, their wealth, their polished world, their ability to make him feel like a boy in the wrong shoes. And rather than stand beside the father who raised him, he tried to hide me where their eyes would not have to adjust. That is the terrible thing about shame. It rarely attacks the people who caused it. It turns around and wounds the people who would have loved you anyway. "Dad," Patrick said, and now he sounded tired. "You don't understand how these people work." "I understand exactly how they work. They made you believe my chair was negotiable." He looked toward Sterling. "So what? You're going to punish Marissa because you got your feelings hurt?" I stepped closer. My voice stayed calm. That mattered. "I am not taking the gift away from Marissa. I am taking it away from the hands trying to hold it for her." Meredith said, "That is legally accurate. A temporary pause does not revoke beneficiary support. It prevents unauthorized coordination, announcement, or third-party involvement until beneficiary-only review is completed." Patrick stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. No. The phone had only allowed the paperwork to speak. Willow whispered, "Does Marissa know about the 92,000? I looked at her. Some of it. Not all the details. I wanted to talk to her after the wedding, quietly. Patrick seized on that. "So, you hid it too?" "No," I said. "I protected it. There is a difference." He gave a bitter little laugh. "From me?" I did not answer quickly. That silence hurt him. Good. Some pain teaches what advice cannot. "Yes," I said finally. "From anyone who might turn her future into a microphone moment." Before Patrick could answer, Kyle Bradford approached from across the courtyard. He looked uncertain, caught between the family he came from and the woman he had just married. "What's going on?" Kyle asked. Patrick immediately straightened. "Nothing, just Dad overreacting." I turned to Kyle. "Did you know Marissa asked me to sit in the first chair?" Kyle hesitated. A weak man always pauses before disappointing everyone. "I knew she wanted you near the front." "Did you know I was moved behind a column?" His eyes shifted to Patrick. "I knew there was a seating adjustment." Willow muttered, "That is one ugly way to say theft." Patrick snapped, "Willow!" I raised one hand slightly. "No, let her keep the honest language. The adults seemed to be running short. Kyle looked ashamed, not enough to fix anything yet, but enough to know he had been part of something small. Meredith returned to business. Mr. Donovan, I am sending a temporary pause notice now. It will state that the newlywed support addendum is pending beneficiary-only review. No announcement, no transfer coordination, no joint family presentation, no Bradford involvement. Patrick's face changed at the last line. That's unnecessary. Meredith asked, Are the Bradfords parties to the trust? No, but then it is necessary. I almost smiled, only a little. Alma would have enjoyed Meredith's manners. Polite enough for church, sharp enough for court. A notification appeared on my phone. Email from Meredith Bellamy. Subject, temporary pause, newlywed support addendum. I opened it. There it was. Formal, clean. A line drawn where Patrick had assumed there would only be softness. Patrick looked at the screen. You're really doing this. I already did. You're going to embarrass me in front of them. I looked toward the first chair through the chapel doors. Empty now, ribbons still tied to the side, the card with my name missing. You embarrassed yourself when you made your daughter search for me. He said nothing. That was the first honest thing he had done all day. Meredith asked if I needed anything else. I looked at Patrick, at Kyle, at Willow, and then across the courtyard where Marissa still smiled in her white dress, not yet knowing how close her future had come to being turned into a status prop. No, I told Meredith. For now, let the wedding continue. Patrick blinked. You're not telling her? Not before dinner. Not like this. His relief came too quickly. I saw it. So did Willow. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Do not mistake restraint for surrender, Patrick. The guitarist changed songs near the fountain. Guests began moving toward the reception hall. Somewhere inside, microphones were being tested for speeches. Patrick looked toward the doors, and for the first time that day, he seemed less worried about where I was sitting, and more worried about what I could stop from being said. The chair they took from me was wood and ribbon, but the future they were trying to display was paper, signatures, and my name at the bottom. After Meredith sent the pause notice, I stepped away from the courtyard. Not far, just far enough to stop hearing Patrick breathe like a man whose plan had lost its polish. The reception hall was opening. Guests were drifting inside, guided by servers holding silver trays and smiles that had been trained to survive family tension. I stayed near the chapel doorway. The first chair was empty now. Sterling and Blythe Bradford had moved outside for photographs, but their card still sat on the chair that was supposed to hold my name. A white ribbon hung from the side. Soft, pretty, useless. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folded wedding program. The paper had creased where my fingers had held it too tightly. Reserved, grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. There are some humiliations that become worse after the room empties. In the moment, pain has noise around it. Music, guests, movement. Someone adjusting flowers, someone whispering about the schedule. But afterward, when you see the empty chair sitting there like nothing happened, that is when the insult stops performing and starts settling into your bones. Rosalie Pierce, the photographer, found me there. She was a careful woman in her late 30s, with 2 cameras hanging from her shoulders and the cautious face of someone who had seen too many family arguments through a lens. Mr. Donovan? I turned. Yes? She held her camera close, not like a tool now, but like evidence she wished she did not have. I don't want to intrude, she said, but I think you should see this. My first instinct was to say no. Old men learn to refuse new pain when the day has already given them enough. But something in her voice stopped me. She turned the camera screen toward me. The photograph was bright and beautiful at first glance. Marissa at the chapel entrance. White dress, bouquet held in both hands, light falling across her face. But then I saw her eyes. She was not looking at Kyle. Not yet. She was looking toward the first chair, toward where I had promised to be. And in that chair sat Blythe Bradford, chin lifted slightly, pearl clutch on her lap. Sterling sat beside her, polished and still, like a man who had never once wondered whether he belonged anywhere. At the edge of the frame stood Patrick, my son. He was looking away, not by accident, away. That broke something in me more quietly than anger ever could. Rosalie lowered her voice. I took several shots. In all of them, she looks there first. I stared at the tiny screen until the chapel blurred. Marissa had looked for me, not guessed, not glanced randomly. Looked. A grandfather knows the difference. I remembered her first school art show, standing beside a poster painted with crooked yellow birds. She had searched the gym until she saw me near the folding chairs. Then she lifted one hand, barely, just enough for me to know she had found her courage. I remembered her first choir solo, even though she was an art child and not a music child. She had forgotten the second line. I tapped my tuning fork softly against my palm, and she smiled because she knew I was still there. Find the note, sweetheart. That was our little joke. Find the note. Today, she had searched for her note and found strangers sitting in tune with money. Rosalie said, I'm sorry. I nodded because words were not safe yet. Then Willow came rushing over from the guest table side, her face flushed and angry. Grandpa Gabe. She held something flat against her chest. What is it? She opened her hand. My chair card. Grandfather of the bride. Gabriel Donovan. It was bent at one corner. Dust clung to the edge. Where did you find that? I asked. Under the guest table, she said. Behind the basket with the programs. Under the table. Not misplaced. Hidden. A card does not crawl under a table by itself. I took it from her slowly. For a moment, the card in my hand and the photograph on Rosalie's camera became the whole day. One showed where I was supposed to be. One showed who suffered when I was not there. Willow's voice shook. They hid it, didn't they? I looked toward the courtyard, where Patrick was speaking to Kyle now. His hands were moving in small controlled gestures, the way he spoke to hotel clients when something expensive had gone wrong. Yes, I said. They did. Rosalie hesitated. Do you want me to delete the photo? No. The answer came quicker than I expected. No, I repeated, softer. Some things need to be remembered correctly. She nodded. Then she stepped back, giving me the kindness of space. I held the card in one hand and Alma's tuning fork in the other. Wood and ribbon had taken my place, but paper was bringing me back. Patrick crossed the chapel entrance then, saw me with the card, and stopped. His face tightened. Dad, he said, please don't make this bigger. I looked at him. It was bigger the moment she looked for me and found them. His eyes flicked to the camera in Rosalie's hand, then to Willow, then to the card. He knew the room had witnesses now. That changed his face more than my pain did. I wish I could tell you that surprised me. It did not. By then, I understood Patrick was not afraid of hurting me. He was afraid of being seen hurting me. That is a different sickness. He stepped closer. Marissa is happy. Don't drag her into this. You already did. No, I protected her from unnecessary drama. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the word protected had become almost unrecognizable in his mouth. Protected her? I said. She asked for one face in that first chair. You gave her a social arrangement. His jaw worked. You don't know what it's like dealing with people like the Bradfords. I know what it's like raising someone who became afraid of them. That landed. For a second, he looked like the boy I used to drive to school concerts. The boy who would sit in the passenger seat and ask if his tie looked stupid. Then the man came back. The reception is starting, he said. Can we just get through today? I looked at the card, then at the photo, then at him. That depends on what you were planning to say before dinner. His face changed again. Too quickly. Too clearly. I did not need Meredith's message yet to know there was more. But it arrived anyway. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. Meredith Bellamy, a text. I found the draft toast. You need to see it before the reception speeches. The courtyard noise seemed to fall away. The guitar, the laughter, the clinking glasses. All of it thinned into one long, wrong note. Patrick saw my screen. He did not read the whole message, but he read enough. Dad, he said, quieter now, whatever she sent you, it was just wording. Just wording. Just deceit. Just presentation. Just background. Small words, all lined up like little doors hiding larger rooms. I put the bent chair card into my inside pocket beside the wedding program. Then I slid Alma's tuning fork in after it. I was not shaking anymore. That frightened me a little, because calm is where decisions go when anger stops asking permission. Willow touched my sleeve. Grandpa Gabe? I looked at her. Stay near Marissa, I said, but don't tell her yet. Willow nodded, though her eyes were still burning. Patrick whispered, Thank you. I turned to him. Do not thank me. I am not protecting you. He swallowed. I know. No, I said. You don't. Not yet. Across the courtyard, Marissa laughed at something Kyle said. She looked young, happy, unaware. I let myself watch her for 3 seconds. Just 3. Then I opened Meredith's message. I thought the worst thing they had stolen was my chair, until I saw the draft toast they planned to give before dinner. I opened Meredith Bellamy's email while the wedding guests moved into the reception hall. The subject line was simple. Draft reception remarks. Patrick Donovan. No warning, no dramatic language, just enough truth to ruin a man's appetite before dinner. I stood near the chapel wall while servers carried trays of champagne through the courtyard. Somewhere inside the reception hall, silverware clinked against plates. A jazz trio had started warming up near the dance floor. The wedding was still beautiful. That was the strange part. Pain does not stop flowers from looking expensive. I opened the attached document. The first lines were harmless enough. Patrick thanking guests, thanking the Bradfords, thanking 2 families coming together. Then I reached the middle paragraph. And there it was. The Donovan family is proud to help Marissa and Kyle begin their future with meaningful support as they start their first home together. I read the sentence twice, not because I misunderstood it, because I understood it perfectly. No mention of Alma, no mention of the trust, no mention of the grandfather who spent years quietly building that support, one careful deposit at a time. Just the Donovan family, a polished phrase wide enough to hide theft inside it. I kept reading. With both families working together, Marissa and Kyle are beginning married life surrounded by generosity, guidance, and opportunity. And both families. That was the trick. The money would come from me. The applause would belong to the room. I scrolled lower. Another line waited there like a knife wrapped in ribbon. My father has always preferred staying in the background, but his support has helped shape this day. Background. Again. He had not only moved me physically, he had rewritten me socially. I laughed softly under my breath. Not loudly, just enough to hear how tired it sounded. Rosalie Pierce passed nearby with her camera bag and paused when she saw my face. Mr. Donovan? I handed her the phone. She read quietly, then looked up slowly. Oh. That single word carried more honesty than the whole speech. Willow appeared a moment later, still carrying seating folders under one arm like she needed paperwork to keep herself from exploding. What happened? Rosalie handed her the phone. Willow read the paragraph and her cheeks went red instantly. He was going to announce your money? No, I said. He was going to announce his image using my money. That distinction mattered a lot. Willow shook her head. He sounds like he's introducing sponsors at a fundraiser. Exactly. Not family. Presentation. The same disease wearing a tuxedo now. Another message from Meredith arrived underneath the attachment. There is more. Scroll down to the email chain. So I did. Below the draft toast sat forwarded emails between Patrick and Meredith. Patrick had written, "For presentation purposes, it would help if the support could be framed as a family contribution during the reception remarks." Presentation purposes. I kept scrolling. Another message. "The Bradfords are very formal people, and I want the optics to feel balanced between both families." Optics. There it was again. My granddaughter's future reduced to visual management. Then came the line that finally stopped me breathing for a second. "My father prefers to stay in the background and would likely be uncomfortable with direct recognition." I stared at that sentence for a long time, because somewhere under the manipulation sat something uglier than greed. Shame. Patrick had spent so many years apologizing for where he came from that he started doing it before anyone even asked him to. Willow whispered, "He wrote that about you?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "But Grandpa Gabe, everyone knows you helped raise Marissa." I looked toward the reception hall entrance. That is exactly why he needed the speech. Willow frowned. I nodded toward the screen. If people already know who loved her, then the only way to change the story is to rewrite who gets credit publicly. Rosalie crossed her arms tightly. He was turning affection into branding. That woman saw people too clearly for wedding work. Another forwarded item sat lower in the chain. This one was not from Patrick. It came from Blythe Bradford. Meredith must have attached it because Patrick had copied her accidentally during seating coordination. The message read, "Make sure the support acknowledgement happens after the Bradford toast. The optics will feel stronger that way." Then another line underneath. "Your father seems sentimental. Better to keep the presentation clean." Clean? I almost smiled again. People like Blythe Bradford always use tidy words for ugly behavior. Clean, appropriate, balanced, elegant. What they mean is simple. Hide whoever lowers the market value of the photograph. Patrick approached before I could put the phone away. He saw Willow holding it, saw Rosalie's expression, saw my silence, and immediately knew the room had shifted against him. "Dad," he said quietly, "can we talk alone?" "No." The answer surprised him. Amigas. Good. For once, he should not get privacy while I carried humiliation publicly. His eyes moved to the phone. "She sent you the draft." "Yes." "It was just wording." That sentence again. Just wording. Just seating. Just optics. Small lies stitched together until they became a personality. Patrick lowered his voice further. "I was trying to make things smooth between the families. You were trying to make yourself look equal to people who taught you to feel embarrassed by me." His face tightened hard at that. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "Fair would have been my granddaughter finding me where she asked me to be." He glanced toward the reception doors nervously. Guests were beginning to take seats for dinner. I could hear silverware and low conversation drifting outward. Somewhere inside, someone tapped a microphone twice. Patrick swallowed. "The Bradfords notice everything. So you removed the things they might judge." His jaw flexed. "You don't understand what these people are like." "I understand exactly what they are like," I said. "What I failed to understand was what you were becoming beside them." That hurt him. I saw it land. For one moment, the confident hospitality salesman disappeared, and I saw the boy who used to beg Alma not to make him wear thrift store jackets to school concerts. Back then, Alma would kneel and straighten his collar. Then she would say, "Anybody who laughs at where you came from is announcing the poverty of their own character." Patrick loved that sentence when he was 14. Apparently, wealth had convinced him to forget it. Kyle Bradford approached then, looking pale. "What's happening?" Willow turned the phone toward him before Patrick could stop her. Kyle read the speech draft, then the emails. His face changed slowly, like someone watching a mirror crack. "You were going to announce the trust?" Patrick snapped. "It was not a big deal." Kyle looked at him. "No, moving him was already bad. This makes it worse." Patrick rubbed both hands across his face. "You don't get it. Your parents care about this stuff." Kyle answered quietly. "That doesn't mean we had to." Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that arrives when somebody weak finally says one honest thing. I looked toward the ballroom doors again. Inside that room sat guests, waiting for speeches, champagne, and stories about family unity. And somewhere near the head table sat Marissa, still believing this day had only one betrayal. Patrick looked at me carefully now, not angry anymore, afraid. "Dad," he whispered, "please don't destroy tonight." I folded the phone shut. Then I slipped the bent chair card deeper into my pocket beside Alma's tuning fork. I am not the one who turned love into a performance. He closed his eyes briefly. The microphone inside the reception hall squealed once as someone adjusted the volume. A wedding coordinator stepped into the doorway. "Family speeches in 10 minutes. Patrick looked at the doors, then at me, and for the first time all day, he seemed less afraid of embarrassing me and more afraid of explaining me. The coordinator said family speeches would begin in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That was how long Patrick thought he had to turn my gift into his presentation. 10 minutes to smile. 10 minutes to stand at a microphone. 10 minutes to make everyone believe the Donovans and Bradfords were two polished families, joining hands over generosity, grace, and future plans. But truth does not need much time. Only a door. Meredith Bellamy appeared on my phone screen 2 minutes later, calm as ever, wearing reading glasses and the expression of a woman who had ended more family nonsense with one paragraph than most people ended with shouting. "Mr. Donovan," she said, "I have formalized the temporary pause." Patrick stood beside me, pale now. Kyle was still there too, looking like a man who had just realized silence had made him part of the furniture. Willow stood behind my shoulder. Rosalie stayed near the doorway with her camera lowered, not filming, not photographing, just witnessing. Meredith continued, "No announcement may be made regarding the newlywed support addendum without your approval, and Marissa Donovan's beneficiary-only review." Patrick said quickly, "Meredith, this is not necessary." She looked at him through the screen. "It is precisely necessary." That shut him up for one beautiful second. Then she added, "Patrick Donovan is not trustee. Sterling and Blythe Bradford are not parties to the trust. Kyle Bradford is not a party to the trust. No family representative is authorized to coordinate, present, redirect, describe, or frame the funds as a joint family contribution." Every word landed like a chair being put back where it belonged. Patrick rubbed his forehead. "Can we please not do this where people can hear?" I looked around. People were not crowding us. Not yet. But Sterling and Blythe had noticed the huddle near the reception entrance. They began walking over, slow and polished, the way wealthy people move when they believe the room will make space for them. Sterling arrived first. "Is there a problem?" Blythe looked at Patrick, then at me, then at the phone. Her smile was still there, but the warmth had left it. Gabriel Donovan may have been old, but I knew a practiced face when I saw one. Meredith answered before Patrick could decorate the moment. "There is a trust matter being corrected." Sterling's brows lifted. "A trust matter?" "Yes," Meredith said. "One involving Marissa Donovan's support addendum." Blythe's smile tightened. "Oh, that? We only wanted the acknowledgement to be graceful." I took the bent chair card from my pocket and placed it on a small side table between us. "Grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan." "Graceful," I said. "Would have been leaving this where Marissa asked for it." Sterling glanced at the card. "This seems excessive for a seating misunderstanding." I looked at him. "Then why did everyone need to misunderstand it in the same direction?" No one spoke. Willow made a sound that might have been a laugh if the day had been kinder. Blythe's voice cooled. Mr. Donovan, no one meant disrespect. Weddings require presentation. There it is again, I said. Presentation. Patrick whispered, Dad. I held up one hand, not harshly, just enough. You gave my chair away because you thought status sat in it, so I made sure my money never would. That sentence changed the air. Sterling understood first, not emotionally, financially. His eyes moved from me to Patrick. What does that mean? Meredith answered. The $92,000 addendum is paused pending direct review with Marissa only. No disbursement, no public announcement, no family coordination, and no Bradford involvement. Blythe turned sharply toward Patrick. You said this was handled. Patrick closed his eyes. That was the moment I realized the Bradfords had not needed my money. Not really. They needed my money to appear in the right sentence. They wanted the story of matched families, clean optics, balanced generosity. They wanted a background grandfather's gift to shine under foreground names. Then Marissa walked in, still in her wedding dress, still holding part of her bouquet, still glowing enough that the room should have protected her from all of us. But Willow must have sent for her, or maybe daughters sense when fathers have finally run out of lies. She stopped near the doorway and looked from face to face. What's going on? Patrick straightened too fast. Nothing, honey, just a small family thing. Marissa looked at me. Not him, me, Grandpa? I wanted to spare her, even then, maybe especially then. But there comes a point when sparing someone from truth only leaves them surrounded by people willing to edit their life. I picked up the chair card. This was supposed to be on the first chair. Her eyes dropped to it, then lifted. What do you mean supposed to be? Patrick said, Marissa? She turned to him. No, let him answer. I said softly, Your father moved me behind the column before the ceremony. The Bradfords sat where you asked me to sit. Her face changed slowly, like a candle going out in a room that was still full of flowers. I looked for you, she said. 3 words, that was all. I felt them worse than any insult. I know, I said. Her eyes filled. I thought you were late. Patrick looked down. That was his confession before he had the courage to speak it. Marissa stared at him. You told me Grandpa got held up. Patrick's voice was small. I was trying to keep the day smooth. No, she said. You were trying to keep him hidden. Blythe stepped in, voice smooth as polished stone. Marissa, sweetheart, this is not something to upset yourself over during your reception. Marissa looked at her. I'm already upset. Good girl. Alma would have loved that. Rosalie Pierce approached carefully. Marissa, she said, I took a photo during the processional. I wasn't sure whether to show it now, but... Marissa reached for the camera. Rosalie showed her. I watched my granddaughter see herself searching for me. I watched her see Sterling and Blythe in my place. I watched her see Patrick looking away. No one in that small group moved. The wedding continued around us, muffled now by walls and polite music. Guests laughed inside the hall, unaware that the center of the day had shifted from flowers to truth. Marissa handed the camera back. Then she looked at Kyle. Did you know? Kyle swallowed. I knew there was a seating adjustment. That is a coward's sentence, she said. He took it. He deserved it. I'm sorry, he said. I should have asked you. Yes, she said. You should have. Then Meredith spoke again, not unkindly. Marissa, I will review the support addendum with you directly after the wedding, if and when you are ready. No funds will go through your father, your in-laws, or anyone else. It remains yours to consider independently. Marissa looked confused for a moment, then hurt in a new way. What support addendum? Patrick inhaled. I closed my eyes briefly. Of all the things I wanted for her wedding day, learning this in a side room was not one of them. I said, It was meant to be a private conversation with you, after the honeymoon, not a speech, not a display. Meredith added gently, "The amount is significant, but the important part is control. It is for you, not for family presentation." Marissa looked at Patrick again. "You were going to announce it?" He said nothing. Blythe did. "It would have been tasteful." Marissa turned toward her. "You sat in my grandfather's chair." Blythe opened her mouth. Marissa did not let her fill it. "And now you're telling me how to tastefully use his gift." Sterling cleared his throat. "This has become unnecessarily emotional." I almost laughed. There it was. Emotion as accusation. The last refuge of people who create pain and then object to sound. Marissa stepped closer to me. "Grandpa, were you going to take it away?" "No," I said. "I was not taking the gift away from you. I was taking it away from the hands trying to hold it for you." She started crying then, not loudly, just enough to be real. Then the wedding coordinator appeared again, nervous now. "Family photos are scheduled before speeches." Blythe seized the chance. "Good. Let's gather everyone and move forward." Marissa wiped her face with the side of her finger. "No." The word was quiet, but final. Everyone looked at her. She turned to Rosalie. "No front family photo until my grandfather is in the first chair." Patrick whispered, "Marissa, please." She looked at him. "I asked for one thing." He had no answer. Willow moved first. She took the bent chair card from the table, straightened it with both hands, and walked toward the chapel entrance. I followed slowly. Marissa took my arm, not for support, for declaration. When we reached the front row, the chair was still there. White ribbon, empty seat. Willow placed the card back where it belonged. Grandfather of the bride, Gabriel Donovan. Marissa touched the back of the chair and looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said. I shook my head. "You found me eventually." She gave a broken little laugh. Then she pulled me beside her for the first family photograph. Not hidden, not background, not behind a column. First. The Bradfords stood stiffly to one side, their visual hierarchy ruined by the simple fact that love had returned to the frame. Patrick stood in that picture too, near enough to be seen, far enough to understand what he had done. The first chair came back before the photographs were taken, but the son who had moved it now had to stand in every picture beside the truth he tried to hide. 3 weeks after the wedding, I met Marissa at a small cafe near Canyon Road. No flowers, no photographers, no Bradfords arranging people like centerpieces. Just my granddaughter in a denim jacket, carrying a sketchbook against her chest the same way she had when she was 12. The waitress brought coffee. Marissa wrapped both hands around the cup before speaking. "I keep replaying the aisle in my head," she admitted. "I remember looking for you, and when I couldn't find you, something felt wrong before I even understood why." I nodded slowly. "That's because love notices absence faster than logic does." She smiled sadly at that. There were shadows under her eyes now. Not dramatic ones, real ones. The kind people get after discovering a family story had another version hidden underneath it. Kyle came later, without his parents. That mattered. He sat down carefully, like a man entering a room where honesty had become more expensive than comfort. "I should have stopped it," he said quietly. "Yes," I answered. No anger, no shouting, just truth. Sometimes calm truth humiliates people more than rage ever could. Kyle looked down at the table. I kept thinking, your son knew how to handle things better than I did. I thought maybe this was how formal families worked. Formal families still know where grandparents belong, I said. That stayed with him. I could see it. The newlywed support addendum remained paused another 12 days, while Meredith reviewed everything directly with Marissa. In the end, the structure changed completely. No joint announcements, no family coordination, no presentation language. The money moved into direct beneficiary protections under Marissa's name only. The first classroom fund stayed. The student loan relief stayed. The emergency reserve stayed. But the first home allocation changed into something Alma would have loved more anyway. The Alma Donovan First Chair Art Grant. Marissa cried when she heard the new name. The grant would help first-year public school art teachers buy classroom supplies without spending grocery money on paintbrushes and paper. Small grants, quiet grants. Enough to remind young teachers they mattered before burnout taught them otherwise. Alma would have smiled at that. Patrick called me 6 times during those weeks. I answered once. He sounded tired, older somehow. "Dad," he said, "I know I messed up." I sat on my porch listening to wind move through the cottonwoods behind my house. "Messed up?" I repeated. "Patrick, you hid me at your daughter's wedding so wealthy people would feel more comfortable." Silence. Then he whispered the truth he should have said years earlier. "I didn't want them looking down on us." Us. Funny how the word returned only after the performance collapsed. I closed my eyes. "Your mother spent her whole life teaching you not to kneel emotionally before people with money." "I know." "No," I said gently. "Now you know." That conversation did not heal anything immediately. Real damage rarely repairs itself inside one emotional phone call. Those are movie endings. Real families move slower than that. Patrick and Marissa barely spoke for almost a month. Blythe Bradford sent one email calling the wedding conflict an unfortunate emotional misunderstanding. Meredith answered it for us, professionally, coldly, beautifully. Sterling Bradford never contacted me again. That told me enough. Men like Sterling do not apologize when status fails. They simply relocate their attention to rooms where nobody challenges them. But Marissa changed. Not all at once, quietly. She started noticing things she used to excuse. Who interrupted whom? Who performed kindness when important guests arrived? Who treated waiters differently than donors? Who became smaller around wealthy people and harsher around ordinary ones? Pain sharpened her vision. That is one of grief's few gifts. A month later, she came to my house carrying a framed photograph. Rosalie Pierce had printed it. It was the photograph from the aisle. Marissa in white, eyes searching the front row. Sterling and Blythe in my seat. Patrick looking away. "I almost threw it out," she admitted. "But you didn't," I said. "No." She touched the frame softly. "Because I want to remember what pretending costs." That sentence nearly broke me. Not because it was cruel, because it was wise. Too wise for someone her age. We placed the photograph beside Alma's old upright piano in my living room. Not to preserve humiliation, to preserve clarity. There's a difference. A few days after that, Marissa attended the first small meeting for the Alma Donovan First Chair Art Grant. 5 young teachers sat around folding tables discussing classroom budgets like generals planning a war with glue sticks and dry markers. One teacher admitted she had been buying watercolor paper with credit cards. Another confessed she almost quit teaching because she could not afford supplies for her students anymore. Marissa listened quietly. Then she looked at me across the room, and she smiled, the exact same smile she used to give me before school concerts when she finally found my face in the crowd. That smile told me something important. The first chair had come back. Not physically, spiritually. As for Patrick, I did not cut him out of my life completely. Some people might have. Maybe they would have been justified. But I am an old music teacher, and old music teachers spend too many years believing broken things can sometimes learn harmony again. Still, I gave him conditions. Real ones. I told him plainly, "You may return to family conversations when you can publicly admit why you moved me." Not if, when. Because redemption without honesty is only image management wearing softer clothes. Months later, at a small family dinner, Patrick finally said it out loud in front of Marissa and Kyle. "I was ashamed," he admitted quietly. "I thought if the Bradfords saw where I came from, they would see less value in me." Nobody answered immediately. Then Marissa said the sentence that ended the whole thing better than I ever could have. Grandpa never made me feel smaller for being ordinary. Why did you? Patrick cried after that. Real crying. Not performance, not optics. Just grief finally cornered by truth. I wish I could tell you everything became perfect afterward. It didn't. Families rarely heal in straight lines, but healing finally started once the pretending stopped. And maybe that is the lesson I carried away from the wedding where my chair disappeared. People who love you should never ask you to become invisible so they can feel important. And if someone truly values you, they will not hide you behind a column while using your kindness to decorate the room. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And thank you for caring about this old memory more than I expected strangers ever would. Please tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel and who they reach along the way. And if this story touched you even a little, please consider subscribing to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now, and YouTube seems to believe you'll enjoy that one too.